Okay, welcome everyone. As I said just a few moments ago, this is the cybersecurity webinar presented to you by Freestar Financial Credit Union. My name is Tim Strank. I'm the Vice President of IT. And today we're going to be going over several different things. First, we're going to start talking about the importance of cybersecurity and what it really means and why we actually discuss this topic. We're also going to talk about cybercrime and some of the statistics that goes along with it. Then we're going to dive into malware and ransomware and how it affects you. Then we're going to talk about social engineering. And yes, I try to be a little funny when I say that, when I say let's be social about social engineering. And then we're going to dive into phishing and what phishing emails look like and how they affect you. And then, of course, email security and the importance behind email security. And then the that evolving thing, I guess you should say, is password. And is password a secure password? Too often you still see today that a lot of people actually use password as their password. And I think really because it's easy to remember, right? Then we're going to talk about security questions and some tips to protect yourself. And then we'll wrap everything up with some questions if anyone has any questions. If you do have some questions during the presentation, I invite that you just put them into the chat. I do have my IT manager on board here that he can address any questions that you may have during the presentation. So let's get started. We're going to talk about the importance of cybersecurity. Why do we need to discuss this topic? This topic is very important because it affects not just a few of us, but all of us. As we continue to evolve into a technology-driven society, everything that we do, obviously from our banking to shopping, we do this all online. So, it's really important that we understand what cybersecurity is and what it means to us. And then we also have to understand that we are the last line of defense. You can have as much security as you possibly can imagine on your personal computer and all your personal information. But at the end of the line, breaches happen because we let our guard down. Humans are the weakest link in cybersecurity. I always tell everyone, imagine that you have a solid brick home that with 10-foot thick concrete walls all the way around, and all you have is just one point of entry, and that's a door. And someone knocks on the door and announces that they're the pizza delivery guy when you did not order a pizza, and you open the door. So what good is all that security that you have if you open up the door? So that's where we have to understand that we are the weakest link when it comes into cybersecurity. We also have to understand that the internet allows an attacker to work from anywhere on the planet. It isn't just your neighbor or someone down the street that's attacking you. This person could be attacking you from the other side of the world. Their primary focus is to just get information about you and then use that and steal your identity and also have some financial gain behind it. Cybersecurity common sense is just the fact that, being safe online isn't so different from being safe in the physical world. You have to understand your surroundings and what you're doing at all the time. You can't fall victim to misdirection. That's their primary focus, is to actually lead you into thinking something else and then pull you away from realizing that you just gave away your sensitive information. And then last but not least, keep calm and trust your gut. I tell everyone, if you have just the smallest little amount of doubt in your mind, stop what you're doing and think about what you're actually responding to. Some commonly used terms you'll hear me say is a bad actor, a hacker, or a cyber attack. These are things all related to cybersecurity. So now I want to share with you a little bit of what cybercrime really is and some statistics that go along with it. So what is cybercrime? Cybercrime is really any type of crime which is committed electronically. This can include theft, which you always hear about, and fraud, but sometimes it can even allude in commit murder. The people will use, the internet world to commit those types of crimes. It's kind of scary to think, but it has happened. So why should you care? Crime is a danger, obviously, offline and online. It's all around us, and you have to be, aware of your surrounding, physically and then also on the internet world. Cyber defense basics can go a long way to keeping you and your data out of the hands of those bad actors. You have to understand where you're submitting your information. You have to look at, what websites and, should I be responding to this random email or this random text message? These are all things that you can do to protect yourself. Some other examples of cybercrime, obviously identity theft, child sexual abuse materials is something that's very common out there, financial theft, intellectual property violations, and then of course there's malware and that malicious social engineering that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. When we look at some of the statistics as it relates to cybercrime, there was a 10% increase in the average total cost of a breach from 2020 to 2021. That right there was the largest single year cost increase in the last 7 years. A lot of these criminals, these bad actors out there, they used the pandemic as their gateway. They knew that people were going to be home, shopping online more, working from home more than what they ever have before. So they took advantage of this, and it cost a lot of organizations across the globe in cyber defense and also cyber, loss of financial information. There was a $1.07 million in cost difference where the remote work was a factor in causing the breach. Just as I just said, remote working and the whole fact that we had to shift people home so quickly to work from home, that was one of the single reasons why we saw such a large increase in cybercrime. I just wanted to share with you too, the average cost of a ransomware breach was $4.62 million. This was a rather large increase as well too. And what ransomware is that's when organizations somewhere within the organization, someone clicked on a link and allowed this ransomware to get installed onto a computer, which then overtook all of the data. And these ransoms, basically what it is just what it says, is that you pay a ransom fee and then we'll provide your data back to you. At first, these ransomware people, and I'll talk more a little bit about this later, but what's interesting is at first they weren't paying, once you paid, they weren't giving your data back. Well, then they saw a big decrease in their revenue gain. So then they quickly started, well, if people are going to pay us, then let's give their data back. So there was a little bit of a paradigm shift there in that thinking with the ransomware, but kind of interesting fact to share. So the average total cost of a data breach, you can see here in this graph, I told you it was one of the single largest increases that we've seen in the last few years. Just kind of put things in perspective. We've been floating right around under the $4 million, and we, of course, last year to this year, we've hit over that $4 million range. One of the other things that I like to share with people is when you look at this graph here, this is the vector. This is what was used to commit the data breach. And for the most bang for your buck was compromised credentials. And that's why a little bit later I'm going to be talking about those, making sure that your accounts are safe and secure with a strong password, because compromised credentials was the largest impact, as you can see here in this graph. Phishing was second, and then of course then there's the vulnerability in third-party software, and it just kind of trickles down from there. But it's just amazing to me to see that compromised credentials is the largest impact that we, from the percentage wise, and then also from the dollar amount. One other thing I wanted to share with everyone was just recently last year there was the T-Mobile breach. And this was really kind of eye-opening for a lot of people, because with this T-Mobile breach, what happened is that they were able to get information from T-Mobile that they could duplicate your SIM card on your phone, And then because they could duplicate your SIM card, any text messages that would be going to you could also go to the hacker. So if anybody is using T-Mobile, I know T-Mobile has did a really good job of reaching out to all their customers and adding some extra security measures in place. I would highly recommend that you contact your T-Mobile cell phone provider so they can help you protect you even a little bit further. So let's talk a little bit about that malware and ransomware and what these actually are. We hear these words used so much in the media and of course across all different types of education platforms like what I'm presenting here to you today. So malware, what it really is it's a piece of software that was designed by these hackers, these bad actors, if I do say, that their intent is to harm your data and devices. And usually these types of malware come through like email, from like a phishing email, or you clicking on a bad link. And when the software gets installed onto your computer, sometimes you may not even realize that it actually happened until a few days later when they actually activate the software, and it can do just a wider range of different things. Obviously, computer viruses, Trojans, those spyware, some of the things that you've heard before. So malware definitely exists in other operating systems outside of Windows. One of the things that we always hear about is, well, Windows is the one that you really have to worry about, make sure you protect your device. That's not true. Um, Operating systems such as your cell phones, they do carry an operating system, and for your Android phones, your iPhones, and then even Macintosh computers and or Linux devices, and those type of servers can also have malware be infected onto their computer. So just if you think that, well, I don't use Windows because that's what's attacked the most, well, that might be true that they're attacked the most, but you're still vulnerable to these types of malware infections if you don't properly protect your computer. Like it says here in the slide, Windows is typically the major target due to the high market share. That's the reason why you hear about it so often. And then when new malware is released, other than, it is released on other OSs, it typically has a higher penetration rate due to the fact that people believe that their Android, Mac, and Linux devices are safe and without having to have any type of endpoint security installed. So if you are using a cell phone with Android or like an iPhone or any type of other operating system and you don't have a security software installed, I highly recommend that you do so because that device can be vulnerable to these types of attacks. Some other things I just want to share here with you is these malicious threats are changed in the smallest amount just to evade the detection. That's why malware is still, highly used because they can write these types of programs to go onto your computer and go around even some of the highest and best security software that you have. So that's why it's very important to make sure you know what you're clicking on and what websites that you're going to. That's why at the beginning of this presentation, I said that we are the weakest link. You can have the best software package installed on your computer and you can still be vulnerable. 300,000 new pieces of malware are created every day. So that's pretty astounding if you think about it. That's how much malware is being created every day just for them to have some type of financial gain. And then I wanted to just share here with you too, last year between March of 2020 and April 2020, hackers registered over 300 websites that used the coronavirus related keywords to lure those victims. So that's why, they really used last year's pandemic to their gain. They knew that people would be researching coronavirus and COVID-19 and how to protect themselves from it. So that's why they created a lot of these websites to push out their malware. When we talk about ransomware, I've already talked about this a little bit. Ransomware is a form of malicious software, kind of like malware, that threatens you with harm, usually by denying you access to your data. So what happens is this software gets installed onto your computer and then it encrypts all of the data. And the only way that you can ever get your data back, unless you have a really good backup, is by providing that ransom fee. So once you provide that ransom fee, usually paid out in Bitcoin, they will provide you the key to decrypt all of your data and then you're back in business. Now, am I saying that if you did fall victim to ransomware, that you should pay the fee? I'm going to say no, only because this is why they'll continue to keep doing it. But if you have no other backup, you have no other solutions, that might be your only resort. But that's why I will say to you, make sure you have really good backups, and also make sure you know what you're clicking on and fully aware of the security that you have on your computer. So like I said, what is it exactly? It is software designed to make data or your hard drive inaccessible to the victim until a ransom is paid. Why should you care? Often downloaded as malicious email links, damage to both financial stability and reputation. There's no guarantee that you'll get your data back, even if you do pay. That's why I'm saying you have to be cautious, not just like, well, I'll just pay it. It can be very expensive. And then often used as a decoy for other malicious activity. Sometimes they'll do this to allow other stuff to go in, and they're just stealing your data. So this is why you should be very careful and have some concern for ransomware. One other thing I just wanted to share with you here, as it relates to ransomware costs, to businesses, billions of dollars each year. By the end of 2019, cyber criminals using ransomware had made off with a reported, get this, $11.5 billion in ransomware payments. That is a lot of money. And then by the end of 2020, that number had reached up to $20 billion. So hence why they continue to keep using ransomware for their financial gain. So you've heard me talk a lot about making sure that you are fully aware of what you're doing and always knowing what you're clicking on, and making sure that you're not giving away that information that you otherwise wouldn't. And the tactic that they use is called social engineering. A lot of people, when they hear social engineering, what they're thinking of is, well, social engineering has something to do with like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and all those type of things. Social engineering has nothing to do with social media. Social engineering is the way that these people, these bad actors, these hackers, use that tactic to manipulate you into providing confidential information. Candidates for social engineering attack can range from a corporate executive all the way down to an elementary school student. And here on my slide, it even does say, even the most seasoned IT professional can be victimized by this type of attack. Social engineering, if you find the right person, if the right bad actor is out there, they can trick you. A lot of times you'll see these types of people out on the streets, doing those magic tricks where they kind of like use misdirection to be able to pickpocket you. It's the same type of thing. Like, they point you over to look at something else, and the next thing you know, something else is happening. That's what social engineering is and how they get this information from you. Some of the many forms that can be used for social engineering, phone calls. Believe it or not, you would think, well, like someone calls and starts asking for the information directly, you wouldn't provide to them. But what they'll do is they'll call from an unavailable number, and then they'll start posing as a known vendor or a trusted party. And then they ask you those questions, and it's very sensitive, that you would normally not provide. They could pose as your doctor's office. They could pose as your financial institution. So you have to understand that if someone calls you asking for this information, then they really aren't your vendor or your doctor's office or your financial institution, because they should already have this information on you. They shouldn't be asking for that information. So if anyone does call you asking for that type of information, you might just want to hang up and then call that institution or that doctor's office or whoever's calling you, how to reach out to them, right? You don't want to just, if someone calls you, starts asking for that information, give it away just because they say who they are. Some of those other examples are, that can come through for social engineering are emails, text messages, social media messages and posts. And then, of course, those suspicious hyperlinks. A lot of times they'll put hyperlinks in messages to get you to click on it. And then that's how they trick you into going to a website that looks like wherever you think that you may be going, but it's not actually yet. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, because that's more of a email phishing tactic. And as I'm talking about email tactics, this is something that could be presented to you. You know, like right here on the screen, you see it says legitimate looking source at night. quiteyourworkemail.com. Subject is urgent, IT update, software vulnerability, and it kind of says all of this. So would this email fool you? I mean, obviously, it's kind of glaring here right now to you, but believe it or not, these emails that come into your email box are just as glaring if you stop and actually start reading it. If you hover over the links, it'll show you where it's going. It's not going to where it should be. A lot of times in any type of organization, they will start masking the email to make it look like it's coming from the IT department, the CEO, the CFO, to get you to respond. You may even receive an email from your financial institution that says, hey, we need to update your credentials. Click here on this link. We will never send you an email asking you to update your credentials. You log into your online banking like how you normally would, and then you update that information. We will never send you an email that's saying that you have to update it. Some of the other forums, you know, social networks like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, like I've talked about, and other online forums and email lists, they may, you know, open you up to contacts looking to a friend, follow, or link. You want to stay away from those because those are just more tactics that they'll use to try to get information from you. So let's go phishing. So we hear about this all the time, about email phishing and what it can actually do. And I showed you one already of an email. Believe it or not, email phishing is still highly used. And the reason being is because it's highly effective. Just like social engineering, you might think that this is such a simple thing for them to use, but they do it because it's very cost effective. It costs them literally no money at all in very little time. There's programs out there that can generate these phishing emails very quickly, very rapidly at no cost. So that's why they do it. And yet there's still many people that fall victim to these email phishing and all these different social engineering tactics. That's why it's still used. That's why we're having this webinar to talk to you about it, just to re-educate yourself if you already have had some training like this already. Just a good simple reminder, especially this time of the year when everyone's doing online shopping and getting so many different emails, you could very easily fall victim to. So phishing, what it really is it is a type of cyber attack where threat actors randomly send emails to a broad audience and attempt to trick people into providing that sensitive information like we've talked about already. So here's some other examples. Like I showed you one email already. I just kind of want to start diving into some of these things a little bit more. You know, with an email phishing attempt, it's a bad idea to click on a link in an email just because it could be phishing, a form of online fraud. The term phishing really does come from the word fishing, like as to catch a fish. Online criminals use phishing to lure people to reveal their personal information. And it is important to remember that the final goal of almost every online criminal is to capture data in order to steal money and or identities. As part of a phishing scheme, online criminals often use the name of a legitimate organization, like I've said. They will actually use graphics from that organization because it's very easy to copy those and put them in any type of email. Use the name of a known employee. You may, for here at Freestar Financial, it's widely known that our CEO and president of Freestar Financial is Dreama Isaac. Her information's out there, you know, like as she is the president, so it's easy for them to just grab that off from our company website and put it in an email and make it look like it's coming from her. They'll create web addresses that look very similar to like Freestar Financial, for example, or any other vendor or company that you might be dealing with. And then, of course, according to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, online criminals seek, you know, like I said, that banking or credit card numbers, mortgage and security account numbers, social security numbers, and login IDs and passwords. And I want to highlight that login IDs and passwords because of what I said earlier. That is one of the top vectors for breaches is stolen username and passwords. It's often said that hackers don't hack their way in, they are let in. And the reason why they are let in because they were given your username and password. So you have to remember that. So here's a couple of examples. Other than the email that I had showed you, it might say, we suspect an unauthorized transaction on your account. To ensure that your account is not compromised, please click on the link below and confirm your identity. That's one of the most popular ones that you may see. During our regular verification of accounts, we couldn't verify your information. Please click here to update and verify your information. One of the funniest ones that we all probably have seen and kind of laugh about is a message that states that the recipient can claim a large sum of money if he or she sends bank account information. So you have to realize, if it's too good to be true, if someone's contacting you to give you money, you have to stop and think, why would someone randomly just contact me to give me money, right? Always, always a bad idea to respond. Some of the best things to do to prevent yourself from phishing, like I've said, is always be wary of those requests for information from unsolicited emails, texts, or messages. Be extremely cautious selecting links embedded in emails, text, or instant messages. And then next, be extremely guarded when selecting attachments and free software sent via email or text. Sometimes you may receive an email, download this, attachment. You should always be cautious when you receive an attachment from someone, if definitely unexpected, because you never know if that email was, like that email account was compromised and something being sent to you. In my presentation here, I have some red flags that you can look at. Definitely always look at the from address. That can be faked very easily, so you want to be aware of that. Look at who the message is actually directed to. If it's not directly directed to you, and if it's CC'd to more people that you don't know, that could be a red flag. Like I've talked about these hyperlinks in your email message, you want to be wary of those. Hover your mouse over top of them, and whatever it says on the screen, like in the message here, it might be saying in my message, like on my screen here, it says that it's going to Bank of America. It might not actually be going to Bank of America. If you hover your mouse, it actually does show you where it will be going. Look at the date. If it's sent at a very unusual time, that's a red flag. Think about the subject. Does it make sense that you should be getting an email about my money got stolen? Attachments, like I've talked about, be wary of any attachments to the sent. And then, of course, last but not least, you have to be, this used to be the dead giveaway, is the grammar and the spelling errors, but they actually have software that can help them with that now. I don't know why that was ever a thing, but that's, if you see a lot of bad grammar, some spelling, that could be a red flag too. So as we've been talking a lot about these phishing attempts and coming through email, let's talk about email security and what you can actually do to make sure that your email is safe and secure. One thing that I want to point out to people is a lot of people don't realize this, but when you send a message to someone, it actually passes through several servers and can be easily intercepted without you knowing. So when you send email, make sure that it doesn't have too much sensitive information. And if you do need to send sensitive information, make sure you're doing it in a secure manner. There's a lot of different ways that you can send email. There's email encryption now that you can use to help protect your email, especially when you have to send something sensitive. I know here at Freestar Financial, we have email encryption. So when we do communicate with our members and have to share some sensitive information, we always send things out encrypted, because we want to make sure that we're doing a really good job of going above and beyond, making sure that our members' data is protected. Another thing that I want to point out is junk email, or better known as spam, can be harmful if you open the message. You should never respond to spam. When you get those type of messages, it's just far better just to delete it. I know sometimes there's even a link in there that asks you to click here if you don't want to receive these messages. I recommend to people not to do that, because that could take you to a website that's actually capturing more of your information. And it also lets the spammer know that you are a legitimate person behind that email address, and that that the email address is active. So that just tells them that, ooh, I need to start flooding more things to this email address. So that's why it's just best to delete the spam message and just move on. If you're getting, one thing that I get asked every once in a while too is, what if you're getting those like subscription emails? Like, I don't want to receive this. I signed up for this. Go to that website, and I'm sure that there's some instructions on that website to remove yourself from their mailing list. That's the best way to do it, just to make sure that you're properly removing yourself from that subscription list. As I've said too, be aware of those attachments, even if it is a known source. Always verify what the file extension you are accessing before opening any document. Some commonly email attachments that you may see here on my screen, you have like Excel. This is the extensions of those files. You also have Adobe Reader, Word document, and pictures. Now, even though those are some of the most commonly used ones, one thing that I want to point out is that they can rename those. So you still have to be cautious. Especially is this from someone unexpected. Even though you might have an aunt or an uncle that may have emailed you something, like I said earlier, look at the time when it was sent and why just randomly are they sending you something with an attachment. Before you open it, you may want to respond to them and say, did you send me this? And they may say no. That would definitely be a dead giveaway. Like I've said before, a sample copy of a new application or a game. The person send the message and the subject have no relation to one another. That's another dead giveaway about those attachments. And then definitely any type of these file extensions that you may receive as an attachment, you may want to definitely stay clear away from these, because these are programs that can run on your computer and definitely install malware and ransomware or any type of a virus onto your computer. Like I said before, all file types can be faked visually in an email. Hackers will change the visual properties of a file to imitate another file type. And like I said too, exe files install programs are the most common tool used. And in some cases, normal looking files can run malicious code without your knowledge. So as I've talked at the top of the hour here about the stolen credentials, let's really talk about how you can make sure that your password is secure and not just using the word password, right? So on this slide here, I want to show you, if you start making your password longer in the number of characters, and if you start adding some complexity to it, you can see how long it would take a computer to crack your password. As you can see, when the smaller amount, very instantly, and as we get into the longer length, you can start seeing that when you add some complexity to you, how long it actually takes to crack your password. Now, it is difficult to create that long password. Some people say to me all the time, Tim, how can you come up with these passwords? It's very difficult. There's a lot of different ways, but sometimes it's right there in front of you and you don't even realize it. And I have this little slide here that I want to share. It's kind of fun. It's a funny little comic strip that making a password should not be so hard, right? We start thinking like a secure password has to be very cryptic, like what you see here on the screen. But the problem is you'll never remember that. So then what do? You write this down, and you should never write your password down, because then how secure is that? But if you think of 4 words that you can actually associate with, correct horse battery staple, right? If you take that password, look how long that password is. It's 4 easy words, but yet you can see that it takes a computer a really long time to crack that password. And it's not difficult to remember. That's battery staple, correct. You can see how this comic strip can make it very simple to remember a password and make it very secure. So some password tips that I do want to share with you is use different passwords on different systems and accounts. I cannot stress that enough, because if by chance your credentials get stolen for that one particular online system, hackers will then figure out really quickly where else you have online accounts and then start using that same username and password for all your online accounts. That's why it's very important to use different passwords on different systems and accounts. Because once they get one, and if you use the same pretty much everywhere else, they have access to all of your online stuff. Use the longest password allowed. As I just said a few minutes ago, make your password long because it takes a password cracking program a very long time to decipher that. Use a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters and numbers and symbols if you can remember them. Definitely use upper and lowercase and some numbers. The symbols thing, even though it's recommended and a lot of online systems require it, kind of keep it simple. Don't get too cryptic because that, like I said, all you're going to do is write it down, then you're not going to remember, and then that just makes it even easier for a hacker to get in. Reset your password every few months. The National Security Controls group and organization, they're starting to look at that and say you shouldn't have to do it so often because it goes back to that whole thing that you'll never remember it and then you are having to write it down. So when I keep talking about having to write your passwords down, my next recommendation is use a password manager. There's a lot of software out there that you can do some research on, in applications that you can get on your phone and or on your computer that can store all of these passwords in a very safe, controlled manner. And a lot of them even now have the ability to generate some secure passwords for you. So I highly recommend that for you to get a password manager. So creating a strong password, some of the recommendations that I give people is use a favorite quote or a saying, or create something with just some words. On the screen here, I just randomly, for this presentation, I created this password. Now, do I actually use this password? No, but I just wanted to show you that I just randomly created this password in my head. And all I said was my stove to my oven makes food. You can see like it's a crazy saying, but it makes sense. And it's something that I can remember. It has some upper and lowercase letters, and it has a number in there. So I went to this website here that's on the screen where it says howsecureismypassword.net. I typed in exactly what I have there, and you can see how long it takes for a computer to crack that. 100 sextillion years. That is a very long time. Just because of today's computer technology, that's how long it would take for it to crack that password. So you can see how easy it is to create a nice long password that's safe and secure. So the next thing I want to talk about is security questions. Security questions, we're presented with this all the time, and I wanted to actually share with you that you shouldn't be answering those so truthfully. And the reason why I say you shouldn't be answering these so truthfully is that a lot of these questions that you see here on the screen and in my presentation are things that are very public because we've made them public. And the reason why I say this is because we play those games on Facebook and we share this information with so many different people. Like, what's your dog's name? Where did you grow up? What school did you attend? So when these security questions come out and they ask you this information can be very easily stolen. So should we be answering these security questions so truthfully? We probably shouldn't. But what you can do is you can answer it truthfully, but add something more to it, is what I tell people. And what I mean by that is add another keyword. And in the technology world, what we do is we actually call it salt. Add a little salt to your password or your security question. So let's say if I answer my question, what is your dog's name? And if my dog's name is Corky, and a lot of people know that, and it's shared out in Facebook because you have posted pictures. And when I say shared out on Facebook, not like playing so much of a game like, hey, everyone say what your dog's name is, but you post a lot of pictures of your dog because you want to share that happiness with everyone, right? Like, oh, look how cute my dog is. And what you do is you say, look at Corky. Look how adorable he is, right? So then that information can be stolen really easy. And then once that security question is presented to a hacker, well, they know that Tim's dog's name is Corky. So they answer it with Corky. But if I added a little salt to that security question, it could be a word, it could be some numbers, It could be a wider range of things. And if I just always add that along with the security question, and I know that, but no one else knows it, now you can see how your security question can be very safe and secure. So just for the sake of the matter for this presentation, I'm going to say, like, what is your dog's name? Corky. And I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, that's really simple, but how would anyone know that? Obviously, I would make it a little bit more difficult than that, but you can see how a hacker wouldn't know that if I only know that and never share that with anyone else. That's how you can answer your security questions, be truthful, but yet keep it nice and safe and secure. So as I've already shared, typically users are honest when filling out those security questions. Malicious parties can utilize social media to find out the answers to these questions, which allows them to reset your password. The best practice is to not be honest when filling out these questions. Treat security questions as another password field, if at all possible. So the next thing I want to talk about is, like protecting yourself a little bit more online. It's, we live in this society now where we want to share so much and be so vocal, and make as many friends and be as happy as we can. And I'm all for that, except you have to be careful what you're putting out there. You have to be aware of what you share, especially on those social media, like Facebook and Twitter. So you want to be careful of that social sharing and also those submissions too. One thing that I always tell people too is when you post stuff out on Facebook, like, hey, I'm going on vacation, that's always not the best thing to do before you go on vacation, because from the physical standpoint, not so much from a cybersecurity standpoint, if it's out there that you're going on vacation and you're sharing that your whole family's gone, now a lot of people know that no one's at your home too. So you have to think of those type of things. You have to be always ahead of the game and not be so willing to share everything out in social media. When you get back home, then you can share, hey, we had a great time on vacation. Here's some of the pictures, right? Avoid unsafe websites. Know the difference between HTTP versus HTTPS. The S mean that it is a secure, safe, encrypted website. So if you are entering data into a website that's not using HTTPS, that information could be very easily stolen. The next thing I want to talk about too is be cautious on public networks. And the reason why I say that is because you don't know who's on the network with you. When you go to like Starbucks and they have Wi-Fi there, or McDonald's, and you're connected to that Wi-Fi, anything that you do on that Wi-Fi network, if I'm connected on that same Wi-Fi network, I can see there's ways from a technical standpoint, from an IT perspective, I can steal all that information because we're on the same network. So if you do connect to any public Wi-Fi, and I even say even hotels, be careful what you do on hotel networks, right? Some of us travel for work and we're using those hotel networks. You got to be careful what you're doing on that network, because others on that network can get into your computer and very easily and even steal that packet of information that's going through the network. So be very cautious on public networks. And then the last thing here I want to share with you is delete what you don't need. Saved browser passwords. A lot of browsers will save those passwords for you to make it simple for you, but it's always not a good idea to use those, because your web browsers, with the right malicious software, can be hacked and those passwords stolen. That's why it's better to use a password manager. Social media accounts, if you're not using them, if you have no need for them, get rid of them. And then, of course, those email newsletter subscriptions that I talked about, if you don't really want to receive all those subscriptions, go to that company, go to that website, and learn how you can unsubscribe yourself. The less that you have out in the digital world, the better it will be to reduce your digital footprint, and the less that you will be likely to have your information compromised. So how can you better protect yourself online? Secure your networks, like I said, stay away from those public networks. When we all have these wireless routers at home now, Make sure that they are protected. Wireless routers are a way for cyber criminals to access online devices very easily. Make sure that you are using a secure, password-protected wireless network at home. Make sure you know who you've given your Wi-Fi password to, and that it's not out there so easily for people to get onto your network. Stay up to date. Keep software updated to the latest versions, and set those security software to regular scans. Can't stress that enough. I know that there's a lot of people out there, when they get all those security updates, they just ignore them. They never apply them. Those security updates come through for a reason, because there is some vulnerabilities, and also in your security software, it makes sure that they're updated to know about all the latest trends and attacks that are out there. And then if you connect it, protect it. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of devices now out there that, like even a refrigerator. A refrigerator can connect to your Wi-Fi. A lot of kitchen appliances connect to your Wi-Fi. Your TV can connect to it. You have to stop and think why some of these appliances need to be connected to the internet. And if it really truly needs to be connected, do you really need to control your refrigerator and have the weather on your refrigerator? No. I would go against having those type of devices connected to your Wi-Fi. These are called Internet of Things. Internet of Things are attacked and breached all the time, because a lot of these devices don't have the protection that they need. So one proven defense against intrusion is updating to the latest virus protection software, right? So a lot of these Internet of Devices things that I'm talking about, like these appliances, they don't get the updates. They don't have the security stuff. So stop and think, do I really need to connect this to my wireless network? If you have really no need for it at all, yes, I know it's a quality of life for some of these things, but I would highly recommend not connecting everything to your network. Double your login protection. And what I mean by this is enable multi-factor authentication. You hear this maybe a lot, and it's referred to as MFA. And what this is to ensure that only person who has access to your account is you. And for an example of this, here, I know here at Freestar Financial, for our online banking, we have a system put in place that when you log into your online banking, that you may receive a text message to your phone. Now, we've linked up your cell phone with your online banking because that is multi-factor authentication. And what I mean by multi-factor authentication is there's a lot of different things. It's something that you know, something that you have, something that you are. And what I can go through all of those, like the something that you are is like your fingerprint. That's a different authentication point. Something that you have, like your cell phone, that can receive those text messages. And then something that you know is your security questions, something that you should only know. So anytime you have any online service that allows you to have multi-factor authentication, I highly recommend that you use it, because it can protect you a very long way against someone else overtaking your account. And that is all that I have for you today in this webinar. Hopefully you've gained some new insights on some different things that can protect you online and in the cyber world, as they call it. Certainly, I've given you a lot to think about, hopefully, and a lot of material, and you've retained as much as you can. But I know that our marketing department will be providing this presentation out to people on request. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions for you. If no one has any other questions, I've been monitoring the chat, and I don't see any questions in there. But if you do, please put those questions in there right now, as we have a few more minutes. Okay, well, certainly I don't see any other questions that have been presented. I very truly thank you for all your time attending this webinar, and hopefully you gained some new insights to help better protect yourself. And I thank you for myself and for Jason Harvat, the IT manager of Freestar Financial Credit Union. Thank you so very much. Have a great day, everyone.